home and wholeness is something that is ultimately within us. And it just makes me sad to see how so many people believe that they're beyond repair, they're broken,
Right.
they're abominable sinners if they've been exposed to church. But even people who haven't been exposed to church can report this sense of, I've messed up my life so much, nothing I have to say or connect into would be worth anything. And that just
Right.
makes me sad that so many people are in this external orientation that I need something from the outside to fix me.
Lane, Sarah,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Aw.
Storms are we gonna have this generational rift again?
Oh,
Get out.
no.
Music is like the one thing that we don't connect on.
Mm-mm.
That's okay.
Mm-mm.
That's okay.
Okay.
I still love you anyway.
Thank you.
How are you
Mm.
today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I am loving my background. So, if you're just listening to this, I'm sorry you can't see the pictures, but you could go on YouTube and see our actual videos. My dear friend Tanis Joyce, who is also a listener, shout out Tanis. She painted this flower of life situation behind me. If you're looking at this, and you can't really tell on the video, but it's also sparkly.
Oh, I didn't know that. It is
I know.
gorgeous. Great job,
I
Tanis.
know. I know. She gets an A plus. So she has like just started a little side business called Still Wild Studio, and she is going to be available for hire. So if you are watching this on YouTube and you're like, oh my God, that background is beautiful and amazing. How could I have something like that for me? There is no website or anything yet, but Still Wild Studio and my friend, just reach out to me and I'll give you her info. She's awesome.
Yes. Maybe I should get her number.
Yes! OMG, totally.
Ooh.
So, I mentioned in the intro for the last episode, I just wanted to follow up. There is a history professor, and his Instagram account, and I think TikTok as well, is predictive history underscore, and it's Professor Young. I think it's pronounced Jiang, and I've been following him, and he and astrologers think the same thing right now, so I'm just gonna leave that there.
Mhm.
Yeah. But anyway,
Mhm.
we are here to talk about all things Jamie.
Yes,
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
Yes,
Jamie
I
Merritt.
loved yes, Jamie, I loved this episode. I thought it was absolutely spectacular.
What about it did
Um,
you love?
well, I'll tell you. Um, I loved when she was talking about religion versus spirituality, and she talks about it in her own personal journey and also, just generally, and I think something clicked for me personally when, like, hearing her talk about it,
Mm.
just distinguishing that, yeah, was, like, really interesting for me to hear about, also as someone who grew up, around a lot of, like, Christian nationalism and kind of shying away from anything that feels remotely religious, yeah, like, finding an entry point back into connecting with myself spiritually outside of that is
I
exciting.
love that. I didn't realize that you were adjacent to Christian nationalism in your upbringing.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it will
doggies.
really do a number on you. So,
Yeah, wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm actually gonna force my, students to listen to this or watch this YouTube, because we we talk about recovery and 12 steps and all that sort of stuff, and I did wanna report because I told her I was teaching this semester and I would report back how the students are. They are fucking fantastic.
Ooh.
This is the best class I think I've ever had, and sorry to all my other former students. I loved you all equally as humans individually, but collectively, this group is blowing my mind. So,
Oh my god.
shout out to Social Work
Yeah.
622.
Do you know what feels different?
Well, it's interesting that this course isn't just graduate students. Some of them are either professionals that have been in the field for a while coming back for their CADC, or they're folks who don't even have master's degrees that have just been working in the field and are getting their CADCs. And they're all just like super smart and they have a crazy amount of experience that's, like, so cool to learn from, and they all just they're hungry and they're humble and they share. It's just great.
Oh, good.
I know.
Sounds fantastic.
It
Yeah.
is fantastic. It is
Mhm.
fantastic. So let's just get into the episode. Dr. Jamie Marich, they is the founder and director of the Institute for Creative Mindfulness and Creative Mindfulness Media. Jamie is the author of over 15 books and manuals in the field of trauma, recovery, and expressive arts, including the best selling Dissociation Made Simple and her memoir, You Lied to Me About God. She's currently enrolled at the Chaplaincy Institute studying interfaith ministry in preparation for a career transition. So please enjoy this wonderful episode with Dr. Jamie Marich. Hello, Jamie Marich. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having us.
I love your little pink mic, by the way.
Pink is admittedly one of our power colors. I mean, pink, blue, and purple all are kind of tracks with the bisexual flag, yet we've really leaned into pink since being a young kid, and we've just reclaimed it as our power color.
I love it. I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. We were introduced by my friend
Ah,
Rebecca Kling.
love her.
Yeah.
Love her.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that she connected us. And she's just like, yeah, Jamie's another badass in the world that you need to know.
I try to be.
Right? Somebody's got to.
Oh, don't we know it? Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to. I always love to start these by asking folks their therapist origin story. Like,
Yeah.
how did you get into the field? Why? Like, all of those
Mhm.
goodies.
Well, I think I have to start with the pre-origin story, which is that in undergrad, I absolutely hated psychology. That has to be
Interesting.
stated because I took an elective psychology class and then I think I took an educational psych class. My undergrad degree is in English and specifically a subset of English called American Studies. So I have a pop culture degree. And we were able to take classes all over the map for that, and which was good, but psychology just really, like, turned us off as a younger student, and I think it was because there was we were probably offended by it because there was a lot of dark things we were going through and addiction struggles and all of that, and I didn't even remotely think of entering this field if it weren't for my mentor, my first recovery sponsor, a woman named Janet Leff.
Mhm.
And I was working as an educator, as an English teacher in Bosnia Herzegovina, which is one of the countries of the former Yugoslavia. It's where my family's from. So
Mm.
I went there
Is that where you
following.
oh, so you weren't born and raised there,
No,
but you
I
went
was
there
born
later.
in the
Yeah.
US, but with very strong connection to my Croatian heritage and various I had one grandparent who was a mixed bag of heritages, so I followed the war very closely when it happened in the early '90s, and then I went there after my undergrad to teach English, I taught music, and my mentor, who not only helped me get into my personal path of recovery, Janet, after a few years of, working on myself, she said, "I think you should go back to graduate school and do this," and I said, "You're crazy, I didn't even like psychology."
Mm.
And she even had me write to the one university that was near me that had a like a faith orientation, which was big for me at the time. And I remember looking at the brochure for the count, seeing the DSM on the cover and just being totally intimidated by it. Like, I can't do this. This is too technical. And she
Mm.
said something that was very telling to me that I have remembered to this day. She said, Jamie, working the way you have here, both on yourself, working with kids who were impacted by the war, by economic transitions in the country, she said, "You have learned the art of doing therapy already. Now
Mhm.
you just gotta go back to school and
Right.
learn the science, get your degree so that you can do this." And it's not an exaggeration to say I'm in this field because somebody thought I would be good at it.
Yeah.
And I was at a place in my own recovery where I was willing to take suggestions. Hopefully, I'm still willing to take suggestions from people who know me and people who
Yeah.
have my best interest at heart. But that's how I ended up in graduate school. And then graduate school was its whole wild ride after that, which we can go into if you want. But that was the origin story.
Yeah, I didn't know the addiction connection. Like,
Hmm.
I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon and,
Lovely.
big fan of I mean, I say a big fan of the 12 steps because I think of them
Yeah.
as like a channeled
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
even though I know many people can misuse them and harm people
Right.
with
Oh, for
them.
sure.
right? Like, I really think
Mhm.
there's something about the fearless inventory
Oh, yeah.
that, like, really yeah, I'm saying words that don't mean anything, so you jump in.
No, no, I have very much meaning, and for those folks who are interested, one of my books, Trauma and the 12 Steps, is all about this, how the
Mhm.
steps can get misused.
Yeah.
A lot of culture where the steps are used can be abusive, I'm not doubting that, I'm not doubting that people have had horrible experiences in 12-step venues. I will say that for me, it's what I needed.
Yeah.
The 12 steps themselves, I really take no issue with, especially because I had a sponsor who was trauma informed before it was cool, is what I like to
Yeah.
say. Because when I came to the US for graduate school, when I returned and then started studying here and hearing all about trauma informed, I'm like, Janet was that years ago.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I could kind of roll my eyes with polyvagal theory because I'm like, Janet taught me this in 2000 before anybody
Mm.
knew who Porges was, and all of this.
Yeah.
So one of the ways she was very trauma informed was she let me do things like modify language. So if a
Yes.
word like powerless really messed
Yes.
with me or character defects, we kind of picked it apart, got to the deeper meaning of it. So I say that I still identify as a 12 stepper in the way I still identify as a Christian, that both paths are very rebel for me. That
Mm.
I really reject anything that's fundamentalist because of some of the ways I was raised in Christian religion. And I think what I've learned throughout my various journeys, my faith journey, my recovery journey, even my journey being a therapist, is that so much of the core of what is helpful is still there. Like,
Yes.
I will say, I personally, this is just me, I don't take issue with God. It's what people have done in God's name. It's what
Yes.
people have done in Jesus' name. And even like in the therapy field, because I know that's what a lot of your work here is based on. I reject anything that's fundamentalist
Right.
and think that a lot of harm has been done through therapeutic fundamentalism. So I think there's still a lot of value in the 12 steps, especially if they are appropriately modified to the person who wants to work them.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I sometimes teach in the substance use track at the MSW program where I went to school, and I'm
Mhm.
a by the time this comes out, I will be in the midst of teaching the class, so I can
Okay.
report back in the intro for people. But
Woohoo.
but next semester teaching the
Mhm.
substance use groups class, and the one of the assignments is going to a non-AA 12-step
Right.
meeting, and inevitably, we have to have the conversation about powerlessness and what it
Yes.
actually is in a 12-step context,
Mhm.
and I also have been doing a lot of training with an organization called the Right Use of Power, and
Mhm.
there's a way in which unless you really have had something bring you to your knees, I don't know that you understand what surrender
Mhm.
an empowering surrender feels like. I think that's
So
such an interesting thing to pull apart.
let's go there because
Yeah.
a lot of people I hang out with in trauma world can still get, "Oh, you do the 12 steps? Like, it's horrible because that whole idea of powerless, and aren't we supposed to be empowering people?" I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna challenge that because
Yes.
really the way the 12 steps uses powerlessness is very similar to how Buddhist philosophy would use surrender.
Exactly.
It is saying that for me, if I put this substance in my body, it will win. I have ample evidence of that. And
Yeah.
I have no problem admitting that. And through admitting that, I realize I'm not a powerless person. And so I
Right.
really think it's on the contrary that when you can engage in that surrender, which can admittedly be difficult, and that's what we can help people through, it can actually be a very beautiful step and beautiful idea.
Right, because that's what acceptance is. Acceptance
Yes.
isn't that I condone all of the
Hmm.
things that are happening,
Right.
but I do have to accept reality
Hmm. Correct.
before I can do anything about it.
Yeah, and talking about when I encountered the whole concept of radical acceptance a la DBT, I said, this is right in the AA Big Book that
Exactly.
acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And yes, that's the
Right.
biggest modifier I have to work on with folks, that accepting something does not mean you have to like it. But
Right.
I have this clear memory in early recovery sitting in a meeting and hearing that passage, and it clicked for me. Huh, I can practice acceptance by admitting the people in my life who I say have caused all my suffering, which they caused a lot of it, to be clear, but they may never change. Because up until
Right.
that point, I was living my life from this place of when my mom admits it, when my father gets
Yes.
it, when the boyfriend apologizes, like when all these things happen, then I will be okay. And for me, acceptance in that moment clicked as that may never happen.
Right.
And can I accept that what I am in control of is how I live my life?
Yes.
And that was just such a shift. It was such a pivotal moment, such a pivotal meeting. And I owe that to this thing we call acceptance.
Right.
Again, I don't have to like it, but
Right.
acceptance to me means I'm stopping fighting the reality that something exists.
Right. Exactly. And I feel like the experience of being in recovery is like the whole reason this podcast exists is because I've been pissed at therapists for not doing their own work.
Yeah.
Truthfully,
Thank you.
truthfully, right?
Thank you.
And
Preach.
right, and a good friend of mine, she won't mind me outing her because we talk about this all the time, Sarah Suzuki,
Mhm.
she is in Workaholics Anonymous, and,
Mhm.
the experience of going through recovery sort of, like, again, that forcing a humility of
Mhm.
recognizing there is this, whether it's a substance or a behavior or a relationship or whatever it is that brings you to your knees, and you know that without surrendering to, a larger consciousness than yourself, that you can't live your life in a way that's going to make you happy. What is it? Oh, there's the three, something free and yeah,
Joyous and free.
there you go, happy, joyous, and
Yes.
free, right. Yeah, they don't say that in Al-Anon, so I don't
Mhm.
have all the AA ones in my head, but,
Right.
yeah, so I find that because the therapy field has not centered our own healing,
Mm.
it's it's almost as if therapists are being asked to teach something they're not embodying, which feels
Right.
like an ethical problem to me.
Correct.
Yeah, anything you wanna say about that?
I have a lot I could say about that.
Bring it all, bring it all.
Especially as somebody who has spent most of her time the last 10, 15 years training other therapists. Oh, it's a huge problem, and I think part of the issue is the way our graduate education is set up by and large. I mean, there's
Boom.
exceptions, and I'm glad graduate programs bring in adjunct instructors like yourself, who can offer the bigger picture. But like, it is not hyperbole to say I went running for my first PhD program because I was just filled with this sense of I am not safe with the people here.
Yeah,
They don't seem like they've done their own work. They don't respect how my mind works. And I just can't do this program that is so based on intervention, intervention, and
right.
intervention. And I think the counseling field, by and large, and to some extent, social work, definitely psychology, has done so much in our scholarship to prove that we're a legitimate
Yeah,
medical intervention that it can be so based on intervention and protocol and technique. And I've said in one of my books that we've pushed the science so hard the soul is missing.
precisely.
So I think that is a big part of the overall institutional arch in which we find ourselves.
Yeah,
And I look at my story, and I'm glad you asked my origin story. None of this was my idea to get into
right?
this. And so I think there was a lot to be said that somebody who had a front row to my healing process recommended it because she knew that I was doing my own work and was always willing to do my own work. And I can't help but wonder how many people get into this because of their own, I don't know, 'cause I don't want to sound like a judgy bitch, but inevitably I will. But oh, it just seems like something I'd be good at
Right.
without ever having looked at, is this something I've really been through and explored? I think a lot of people get into the field subliminally
Yes.
because there's this sense of I am going to be the well one and the expert, and
Yes.
I won't seem like I'm as bad next to these people, quote unquote, who are still struggling.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of that displacement, this negative dissociation that can happen. And so I really admire any movements in the therapy field that are trying to flatten hierarchies and see therapy more as a collaborative exchange. Uh, as opposed to I am the well expert who has my shit together. No, you don't. If anybody ever implies that or says
Run.
that directly, yes, because none of us do.
Yeah. Right.
None of us do.
And especially with the world the way that it is now, one of the things I've been talking about a lot is the world that we have now is not the world I was prepared for as a
Right.
therapist. I
Right.
was prepared for a
Yeah.
world where I would be the well one and somebody else would be struggling. But we are all going through existential crisis right now, even
Mhm.
if you're not in the US, because I know the US is
Right.
its own particular shit show. But
Oh, yeah.
globally, things are being updated in many different ways. Old systems are falling away without
Mhm.
new systems having been created yet, and that
Mhm.
creates an existential anxiety that
Mhm.
I'm sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. Therapists are not
Yeah.
doing well.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of factors at play there. And I just think of the amount of technological changes we've seen in our lifetime and
Right? Because
how
how old are you? I'm
I'm
46.
46. What do
Oh
you know?
my god! When's your birthday?
July 6th, 79.
Okay, February 1st,
All
79.
right. Yeah, it's
All
a good
right.
year.
Yeah.
It was a good year. So yeah, I remember this conversation I had with my stepson a while back, and he just asked, Jamie, what did we do for this back when you were little? And what did we do for this? And what did
That's
we do
so
for that?
funny.
And at the end, he concluded, we've grown quite dependent on the internet, haven't we? And I'm like,
Damn straight we
oh,
have.
yes. And I told him, yeah, back when I was your age, we didn't carry phones around in our pockets and all of this. So our generations have experienced a lot in the way of change. And like if you don't feel caught up, then you're falling behind. And I think that's part of just the global burden as well, not to mention
Yes.
wealth inequity, wealth inequality that
Right.
that so many folks are on the underside of. And man, talking about the US, just thinking of what's going to happen with healthcare. Uh,
Yep.
and I say this as a
Unfortunately, I think a
person
lot of
with
people are gonna
tremendous
die.
privilege. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly. People are going to suffer, and I don't say that flippantly.
right.
Again, this is it's acceptance, not
Hmm.
condoning, but
Right,
because of all of the destruction and the people that we have in power right now that couldn't give 2 shits about their
right.
neighbor next to them.
Hmm.
Yeah, I grew up, like, not too far from JD Vance, right?
Oh,
I did summer theater at his high school, like,
oh, wow.
probably while he was there, because I think
Yeah,
my
yeah.
senior year, he was probably a freshman at that point in time, so I was
Hmm.
fucking there. Like, I know
Hmm.
exactly where he came. My cousin read that book and said, "This is our family history. Like,
Hmm.
this is our family
Hmm.
story." So, it's fascinating to me, and I've talked with a lot of folks who grew up in Ohio too, like, those of us who get out of that mindset, right? And especially growing up in religion, right? And you
Hmm.
are being this rebel within religion, like, what is that? What is that spark? What is that thing that kind of gets us over the line and is like, wait a minute, no, we actually not only do we have to care about other people, we have to do something about that. And we have to live in a way
Hmm.
that models that we give a shit.
Yeah. Oh, I have a lot I could say also on that. And to give, because I love being an Ohioan. Like I'm, excuse me, very proud of my home state. I love my home state. Now, I grew up in an Ohio that was still largely a swing state. I was
Yeah.
from the northeast part of the state where I grew up with people of all kinds and there was a lot of disagreement, but there was still this fundamental sense of where these blue collar survivors. And what I unfortunately saw happen with so much of the current regime, and I still think this has been the secret to his ascent, is that he gave people permission to be their most horrible selves
Yeah.
and to blame everybody else for why I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And we as peoples tend to love a scapegoat. And that's very much what I see happening. But I go to rallies and I go to protests, and I know that not everybody around me has fallen for it, even in
Yeah.
Ohio. Like I marched in one hands off rally, one no kings rally in a very small city near me. and
Mhm.
it's the kind of place that is very white upper middle class, but there were still so many folks out saying this is not okay. So
Mhm.
that certainly does give me hope. But in terms of my story and my orientation, so yes, I grew up in Christian nationalism. Like we talk about it now, like it's
Oh,
this
shit.
new thing. But so my parents were here's the Cliff Notes version. My parents were Roman Catholic when they got married.
Mm,
And then when I was about 5, my father converted to a pretty extreme evangelical, group, the kind that hates Catholics and hates everybody who's not them, and I was exposed to a lot of these Christian nationalist ideas before I was 10,
mm.
and dad regularly listened to Rush Limbaugh, and it was that kind of climate where everything who I am, a
Yeah,
feminist, a queer person, a relatively free thinker here was just seen as the devil and the enemy and all of
yeah.
this. And for a lot of years I played along really as a mechanism of survival because when you're a child growing up with parents who say this is the way it is, uh if I wanted to have clothing and shelter and a place to stay, I didn't challenge the agenda.
Yep.
But then as soon as I left their house, it was very clear to me that the rest of the world, if I just opened my eyes even halfway, was showing me something else.
Mm,
And I uh, decided to start listening. And so I kind of had an interesting trajectory because I came out to myself as a queer person at 19, and then I went back into the closet when I got sober because I had this sense of, oh, I was struggling so much because I left God, I left religion. So
oh,
then I explored my Catholicism pretty hard for a couple of years, and I went to a very Catholic graduate school. But even sitting in those classrooms, it was this is not who you are.
mm,
You know a different truth than this that fundamentally and I want to try to not use the language of feeling that like feels right, but it's just this is not the God I know
mhm,
because I have certainly come face to face with this divine presence that is nothing but pure love
right.
when I was in the depths of my addiction. And yeah, I wrote an essay once called Confessions of a Recovering Pro-Lifer, where I talked about
Mm,
how I was raised in this pro-life movement. And if you're
mhm,
going to be a Christian, that's the way you have to believe, and you have to vote Republican or vote whatever candidates
right.
are, well, which is usually Republican, are going to support this agenda. And this is where being in my early therapy world, like the first year of internship and seeing my first year of clients, it's like, wow, the church is really off base.
Mhm,
At least the churches I was raised in, about a lot of what people struggle with and live with. And this judginess is not what God is. So, I look at Christian nationalism and I'm very much filled with this sense of I got out. Like I got out. I mean, I also feel it never was really me, but I was doing a lot of things in that world to just stay safe and stay survived. But I do think compassion is important. This is sometimes where I'm not so popular amongst some more of my progressive because I have this perspective of there are a lot of suffering people
yes.
who are living in conservative containers because they feel that's the only way there is to be.
Yep,
Um, a lot of our queer family who feel stuck there.
right.
Uh, and I just feel like people were patient with me, and I had the solution really come to me a few months ago. I was writing an essay for this progressive Catholic publication I write for, and I know this phrase can we can roll our eyes at it, like, "What would Jesus do?" Because I think evangelicals have kind of co-opted it, but it was actually a progressive Christian phrase to start with in the
Right.
'70s. Yeah,
Yes.
and to me, Jesus is somebody who both flipped tables in the temple. Like, he had his rage that he showed, and he called out injustice when he saw it, but he also sat down with his enemies. And there's
Mhm.
trust me, There's some people I still don't have the patience to sit down with, to be clear, and I'm working on that, but I also know that the Jesus I have come to know
Mhm.
in my life and my studies and my world is somebody who does have deep compassion for others, and I'm trying to, follow that example.
This feels like a good place to ask the question about, wounded healer. Well, actually,
Mm,
let's go with healer first. How do you feel
sure.
about the term healer as applied to you and what you do in this world?
Well, I'm gonna go with wounded healer first because that's attributed to my boy, Henry Nouwen, Father Henry
Mhm.
Nouwen, who is somebody who, he left the body in 1996. I draw so much strength and inspiration from his story, because he was
Mm.
an academic who came back to direct ministry in his last 10 years because he knew that's
Mm.
where God really was. And yeah, he definitely much met the wounded healer archetype. I mean, I have mixed feelings about the word healer to talk to what we about what we do
Mhm.
as therapists, as helpers, because we're facilitators. And I know that's a bit of a cold and technical word, but so I'm still workshopping if
Yeah.
there's a better, word than that, because we're not the ones doing the healing. We are facilitating the process in which others are either healing themselves or working with their resources, spiritual or otherwise, to bring about, healing. But healing just comes from the same root as wholeness. And so now that I'm kind of talking this out, I think a facilitator of somebody finding wholeness, however they're defining,
Mm.
is what I see my role as being.
Hmm. I love that. And coming back to I mean, I think the other thing that always pissed me off about growing up in the church was this idea that being a sinner is somehow like a
Yeah.
bad thing we should not want to be,
Hmm.
and it's like, well, but we all if no one is as perfect as Jesus,
Right.
then we are all sinners. Why are you judging me for it? Why aren't you like loving me for it? And so this idea of like we are already whole, right? Which is again a more
Hmm.
like Buddhist ideal. We are whole. So coming back to our wholeness.
Hmm. So sinner again, I'm a big word nerd. This is probably my English teacher origins, but I love unpacking. Sin, it just comes from Greek meaning to miss the mark. And a lot of progressive theologians will teach that. I mean, a lot of standard, more traditional theologians will teach it too, but we've all missed the mark about something.
Right.
And I wrote this in my memoir, You Lied to Me About God. I said the people I grew up with really missed the mark about me and
Yeah.
people like me. So yeah, I think the word sin is a loaded word for a lot of us. Which is why, like a lot of people who've survived high demand religion, I have found a lot of comfort in Eastern philosophies, the philosophies of India, which teach that we're already whole and things that can happen in our lives separate us from that wholeness.
Right.
And healing is about returning to that source of it. And for people who find that source as God and Jesus, great. But no, I have the personal life belief that God could show up however God wants, and
Yep.
God could be found in so many ways.
That's literally I remember we had some really great youth pastors, which I think
Mhm,
the church that I grew up in was Methodist, so it was, like,
mhm.
honestly, like, pretty chill.
Yeah,
It was really the way that my mom believed that was more
yeah,
problematic than anything
right.
else, and
Mhm,
it was less about fundamentalism, more about her own perfectionism and imposing that on everyone around her.
yeah,
And those expectations, and so I remember because like, when I first learned about missionaries, I was like, "That is so offensive." Like, how
right?
dare you go into somebody else's culture and tell
Yep,
them what they should believe, and I remember having this conversation with my youth pastor that, like, of course God presents I don't wanna say himself because there is no gender, but right, God presents
themselves, yeah.
himself
Mhm,
in whatever way to whatever people to understand, and who is
mhm,
it Why is it a Christian thing that we decide that this is the right way?" And he was like, "Oh, that's actually a really good point." And I'm like, 13, like sorting this stuff out. And again, going back to just your idea of fundamentalism
Mhm.
in whatever sector you're in, anybody who says that they have the answers right now, no. It's so clear we don't have the answers right now. We're
Mhm.
all just like stumbling through this life trying to figure out what it means to be human. So why not like love and care for one another while we're at it?
Yeah, and I think a unifying thing here is if a therapist, a teacher of a therapeutic modality, if a pastor, a healer, a online guru tells you their way is the way and they have the answers and they will I mean, I wanna say, I think it's human nature to want that,
Yeah,
to be like, "Somebody's gonna fix me. Somebody could make this all better." So, I don't wanna chide or shame people for wanting that. I can also tell you after these years of living and trying so many paths because after surviving, 2 pretty high demand religions, I also spent a lot of time at an ashram as well, studying yoga and Vedic philosophy, and I got a lot of great things out of there, and I was exposed to a lot of the same trauma too.
yeah,
So I've just learned in my experience, no one has all the answers.
right.
And this is where a bit of my nerdiness. Wizard of Oz was my first movie. I'm obsessed with both Wizard of Oz and Wicked. And there's just so much to this teaching that you've had the answer in you all along. You may need help to find it. Like Dorothy needed help from her three friends.
And
I
Toto, don't forget Toto.
and Toto too. Yes, exactly, and her animal friends. So I just think that that is ripe with archetypal symbolism about people may help us find the way home, but home and wholeness is something that is ultimately within us. And it just makes me sad to see how so many people believe that they're beyond repair, they're broken,
Right.
they're abominable sinners if they've been exposed to church. But even people who haven't been exposed to church can report this sense of, I've messed up my life so much, nothing I have to say or connect into would be worth anything. And that just
Right.
makes me sad that so many people are in this external orientation that I need something from the outside to fix me.
Yep. Yep. Well, funny story. I think probably before the age of 5, uh, I insisted that my mother call me Dorothy because I was so obsessed with The Wizard of Oz, and like, she would, say, like, "Oh, ask Sarah what her name is," and I would say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm Dorothy Gale from Kansas," so much so that she got concerned that if I were to get lost, I would say, "I'm Dorothy Gale from Kansas," and then that she would never find me again.
That's precious.
Isn't it cute? Yeah.
Absolutely precious. Yes.
And that is a the coming home to oneself is a thing I've thought about. It's been a thread throughout my life of that recognition. And my own trauma healing story really culminated in that understanding, like a really felt sense of like, oh, I can trust myself now. I don't have to search for those
Mhm.
answers outside of myself. And I still do from time to time. And I'm like, sorting through that. But they're like, yeah, having that shift from that, like you said, that external orientation to like trusting oneself,
Mhm.
like, oh, for a trauma survivor, that's the shit right there.
Amen. Preach.
Yep. Well, before because we've got a little bit of time left, I'd love to dream for a little bit because we
Cool.
both have critiques of academia and how therapists go into this field. If you could wave a magic wand, click your ruby slippers, and have created the way that we could be trained, what would you really want to see for therapist training?
Wow. That's a great question.
I know, right?
Uh, well, if I had my way, it would be my academic answer, but then I'll break it down in more people terms here, is more qualitative focus, less quantitative focus. So that would be spending more time in process,
Yeah.
requiring personal therapy as part of graduate training. I do think having more praxis-based classes where we're doing our own work is great. Yet students need to feel that they are reasonably safe
Yes.
with the professors they're working with, and knowing that this is a professor who has also done their own work, and that things I share in a practice space won't be held against me per se, but
Yes.
will be addressed. Because a lot of students have horror stories about that, that if I self-disclose something, it's, like, about my mental health status, it's just then horribly used against me.
Yep.
So, I think it'd be a collaborative, experience. I think a lot of it can be focused on learning interventions because that's important, but then can we look at what it looks like in practice?
Same dream. So, how could we how could we create, cuz I'm actually like thinking about like literally how do we do this? Cuz I'm
Mhm,
working on a book right now that addresses this kind of stuff.
mhm.
So, how do we in the academic spaces vet the professors? Right? To make sure, right? I know you're laughing because it's like
Yeah,
absolutely absurd and it would be the exact opposite of what we have right now.
right. Shoot. I think professors need to send letters of recommendation from people they've worked with. Clinically,
Mm.
that would be a start. Um, I think in addition to a technical CV, like, I could give you my therapy CV if you wanted it,
Yeah.
from the beginning of my recovery journey, what modalities I've practiced, who I've worked with, what I've
Ooh, I
learned
love
from each
this.
engagement. Yeah, what's your therapy CV?
Oh, shit.
And
There's
if
a
it's like
workshop there, Jamie, I think
yeah, and
we
if it's
need
like
to collaborate on.
maybe, now that I'm thinking of this, like, yeah, if I had a little
Oh.
CBT for the required college course I had to take in it, yeah, that's not gonna cut it with me.
Right.
So
Right, right. And, I know that you wrote a piece about evidence-based treatment, right? And the challenges of some of the modalities, like NARM is my primary
mhm,
clinical modality, and it
mhm,
is not a quote unquote evidence-based treatment because
mhm,
it just doesn't fit the protocols for that.
mhm,
And yet we are training students right now to believe that EBPs are the end all be all and that is like
mhm,
the best level of therapy. And here's my thought around this too, because the spirit and soul were divorced from therapy at one
mhm.
point in time in order probably to become more medicalized so that we could.
And fun fact, because I think a lot of it goes to how Freud, who is seen as the father of modern psychology, was a vicious atheist.
Was he an atheist? That makes a lot
Yes,
of sense.
and I think
Why he and Jung ended up parting ways,
splitting,
right?
yeah, because
Yeah.
Jung, a very flawed man himself, to be clear, but very much saw this as a spiritual pursuit.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. A recent piece I wrote, and having grown up in religion, the kind of religion I've talked about, I can see where any talk around spirit, spirituality, soul, God can be an allergy for a lot of
Yep.
folks.
Yep.
And this sense of, well, show me in the numbers, show me in the proof. That feels like it's this illusory, safe protection from superstitions and the things associated with religion. But we have made that as a field its own altar to worship on.
Exactly.
And that's not good either, which is why in my book, Dissociation Made Simple, I wanted to make sure I interviewed indigenous practitioners to understand how indigenous forms of psychology would look at constructs like trauma and dissociation, because it's just so clear to me Western psychology does not have it all figured out.
Right.
And to be clear, I think that there's a path called integral psychology,
Mhm.
which I've done a lot of reading on lately.
Yep.
It's looking at how can we bring it all together.
Yep.
And so I think any graduate training I would do, or would want to organize, would be looking at something that brings it all together. And my whole thing on the evidence-based practice thing, it's been used so abusively
Yes.
in the field. And I routinely cite Dr. San Chang, who's an IFS practitioner, and they've done some advocacy online over the years. And they made a meme years ago that quite simply said evidence-based practice is a colonial project. And I think that just says it all, because so much of what academically goes into informing what EBPs are, you're not looking at the whole picture of people,
Right.
far from it. And so many of the conditions that research take place in are very laboratory contrived, where there's not optimal access, even if it is a usual care setting. And the human being is just so much more dimensional than what can be measured in numbers. So I was trained as a phenomenologist in my PhD background. That's all about lived experience. So that
Mm.
is admittedly my orientation. But Edmund Husserl, who developed that school of philosophy, said the human, phenomenology rejects this Galilean notion that the human experience can be quantified.
Yes.
Because for me, it can't be. For so
Yes.
many people like me, it can't be. And that's what EBPs are all about, is
Yes.
quantification.
Yes. Like, to your point about having more within our graduate educations, I've been going outside of the field of therapy to
Mhm.
try to glean from that, and I've
Oh, yeah.
been digging a lot of stuff on quantum physics, and what I'm bumping into right now is a lot of scientists who are like, "Oh, I was wrong. Science is not the end all be all.
Yep.
There's more." And what the more is often of a spiritual
Mhm.
or mystical nature.
So the other thing, I don't know if this is in my official bio at this point. It's in some versions of it, but I'm also doing a training program right now in interfaith ministry with a group called the Chaplaincy Institute. I want to be a reverend after all of this. And
Wow.
I just wanted an extra degree of theology training. And I will say, and this is hopefully something meaningful to discuss, what I'm getting in interfaith ministry training now is helping me be a better therapist
I bet.
compared to any therapy training I could be doing right now.
And if you could distill why,
It's recognizing that we can't dissociate spirit or soul, no
boom,
matter how much we try. I feel I need to couch this or qualify this by saying spirit slash soul does not automatically equate with religion
exactly,
or anything that's theistic.
exactly.
'Cause I know a lot of people just don't believe that, which is
Mhm.
their right, or a lot of folks have been so wounded by it,
Right,
as I have been.
right.
Yet, in teaching about spiritual abuse and religious trauma, which I do a lot of, I am the prototypical case of somebody who, because I've been wounded spiritually, the answer has not been, "Well, just cut off that part of myself."
Mhm.
It's been, "How do I heal those layers of myself and find a spiritual path that is more adaptive and more nourishing?" Because I think the reason the churches I grew up in, and especially my one parent who was very abrasive with faith, the reason it harmed me so much is because everything in me was wired for spiritual connection. Like I do believe
Mhm.
it's one of my forms of intelligence.
Yeah,
So, yeah, and I think a lot of like the people I'm training with right now in the institute I'm with, they understand and respect the practice of psychology and clinical work as well, and realize that spiritual work and clinical work very much can go hand in hand.
yeah, and there's something like, if I think about the f the people of faith, I'll just say it because that's the
Yeah,
easiest way,
a
because they
great
haven't all
phrase.
been
I use that
pastors,
all the
right?
time. Yep.
Yeah, the people of faith who have impacted me in a positive way, they have had an ability to see and welcome all of me
Yes.
in a way that very few therapists have. My
Yes.
therapist now has, but
Mhm.
there's something, and this I think goes back to our therapist wounding. In supervision, I spend so much time trying to help therapists unlearn that helpfulness that they
Yes.
have in the room, that then they are pushing the client to get somewhere. Um, so that was the other thing that was sort of coming up for me in a curiosity about why it might feel more helpful, because you're being taught to actually love.
Right, and
Not that you need to be taught, but you know
a
what I
big
mean.
part of chaplaincy, I just wrote this in a paper this morning, is to not go in with an agenda. And I cited this one author who said something to the effect of, "Can I practice just really listening to somebody
Right.
instead of listening to respond and responding with all of my brilliant solutions and stories?" And, I just really was moved by this phrase of serving without an agenda. And I know as a therapist, especially in my early days of getting trained in EMDR and getting good at it and becoming quote unquote expert at it, I did feel this peer pressure almost from some of my colleagues like, oh, I better perform. I better help this client who's being referred to me get better,
Right.
or it's going to give EMDR a bad name. Or people do come in wanting results, which again, going back to something I said earlier, I
Right.
want to respect that people want their suffering to be alleviated. So you'd like to do something that hopefully you're feeling some relief from right away. Yet I also feel in therapy, we can push solutions and interventions so hard. And I kind of think they could both work together. I think we
Right.
can have both like conventional medicine, so to speak, and what Victoria Sweet, referencing Hildegard of Bingen, called slow medicine.
Hmm.
This idea that at the soul level, at uh, the being level, things will take time. And I know even Peter Levine has been quoted as saying, slow is fast
Yes.
in trauma work.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, this has been delightful. We are clearly 100% aligned on the same
Absolutely.
page, and we've got to figure out a way to work together.
And it's a good year, 1979. Yeah, we should write a piece on the whole therapist CV idea, therapy CV.
Okay, I'm in. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
email me about that. We'll figure out a way to make that happen. No, this has been a delight. Thanks to our friend
Yeah.
Rebecca for connecting us. And
Yeah.
I just appreciate you and all you're doing, Sarah.
Thank you. Do you want to share where people can find you before we end?
Yeah, the simplest way is go to your favorite internet search engine and just type in my name, and you'll see the different places I show up. I have a personal website, a business website. I am on all the socials. I have various different names and handles that I play with. My YouTube is actually my biggest social presence. Dr. Jamie MM is my YouTube, and I have a lot of good commentaries there as well as some therapy demos. So yeah, you'll find me.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamie.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.